Okay, Aurora, you're in 5th grade, and this is social studies, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what the word right means?
Well, it means correct, but it can also mean you're allowed to do something that belongs to you.
Okay. So, that right belongs to you.
Yes.
That you get to do something. Okay. It is something, if something's considered a right, it's given to you and it can't be taken away.
Yes. It's considered something you are granted.
Okay. So what are some rights that you have?
I have the right to free speech, and I have the right to dress how I like, as long as it's not inappropriate. I have the right to play video games if I want. I have, well, if you say so, and a lot of other rights.
Okay, so that gives me a good example. Playing video games because your mom and dad say that you can, that's more of a privilege than a right. A right would be something that can't be taken away. Now, say if you get grounded, your mom and dad can take away one of your privileges, right? That's the way a lot of parents deal with stuff like that. Like, you have the right to play video games until you get bad grades. And then, we can take that privilege away. So right is something that can't be taken away. So that brings up a very good point. Okay, so we're going to watch a little video that will talk about the Bill of Rights. Do you know what the Bill of Rights is?
It's a document that states all of our rights.
Okay, a document from where?
I don't know.
You don't know? Well, technically, in this class, I would have been covering we would have already been talking about the Constitution. So just so you know, for your prior knowledge.
In my class, we don't.
I know, and you've been doing online this year, so that's kind of what my class is about, is squeezing in that social studies and science and other things that get put to the side when there's not enough time, or like you guys are focusing on the basics when you're doing online learning this year, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. That's a good point. And if you will watch this video, they'll explain to you a lot.
Yeah, the Bill of Rights is that epic and important. It's your right to say what you want, right to a fair trial, and your right to watch dance moms all day. Each and every day, the Bill of Rights affects you and your life. But before we talk about the Bill of Rights, it's important to mention how it came to be. For that, we have to look back at the Constitutional Convention. The Constitutional Convention started May 1787 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where 55 men from 12 states came together to establish our government, define our rights, and essentially run our country. No big deal. Lots of big names were there. Madison, James Monroe, and Alexander Hamilton, just to name a few. But there were also some big names that didn't attend. Thomas Jefferson was in France at the time. John Adams was also abroad, serving as a minister to Great Britain. Even some of our favorite little rebel rousers like Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and Patrick Henry didn't attend because they smelt a rat. Philadelphia, tending towards a monarchy. Their sentiments bring us to how the Bill of Rights came to be. Several men and states believed that the Constitution didn't address the specific rights of the people and therefore refused to ratify it. So, James Madison, known as the father of the Constitution, wrote out amendments that would address these rights. 12
Okay, here we go.
Precise. Eventually, 10 of them would be to break the Bill of Rights into three parts: personal rights, legal rights, and just in case we forgot anything and want to cover our basis rights. I know that sounds long, but trust me, it'll make sense when we get there. Let's start with the First Amendment. This amendment addresses the different ways you can express your feelings. You have the right to practice any religion you'd like, say whatever you like, publish anything you like, provided that it's true, the right to assemble peacefully, and the right to petition the government if they've done something you don't like. This was put in place to give people specific rights to express things about the government they didn't like, in a way that ensures the government cannot inhibit their thoughts in any way. Now, over the course of history, there have been several times when people have used these rights through peaceful protests, political cartoons, and public speeches. Now, it's important to note that while this amendment protects you from governmental prosecution, it doesn't protect you from social consequences. Amendment number 2 is all about personal protection. It's the right to maintain a well-regulated militia for protection and the right to bear arms. No, not like that. This was put into place because, at that time, our national military was still pretty weak. Average citizens needed to protect themselves against Native American attacks, potential threats from other countries, and, if the situation called for it, to rise up against a tyrannical government. To better understand this amendment, we have to look at what these words mean. A well-regulated militia is a group of local men who could act as a military force in times of emergency. They would help fight off Native American raids, invasions, or even act as a local police force. The important identifying factor about these men, though, is that they were expected to be trained, organized, and disciplined. The right to bear arms has been much debated over the years. Some people argue that it protects the right of people to own guns only if they're part of an organized militia, such as the National Guard. Others believe that the Second Amendment protects the right of individuals to own a weapon for their own self-defense. In 2008, the Supreme Court supported this view. The court held that the Second Amendment protects an individual's right to own a gun for personal use, including self-defense inside the home. The Third Amendment deals with soldiers and your home. This amendment prohibits the housing of soldiers in times of peace. So, basically, a big in-your-face to Great Britain with that whole Quartering Act thing. Fourth Amendment deals with your personal property and those who can search through your stuff. It talks about things like unreasonable searches and seizures, improbable cause, oh my! That's all some pretty crazy legal mumbo-jumbo, so let me give you an example. This is Colonist Joe. Looks like a pretty average American citizen. He supports the Patriots, he likes the color blue, and he does like getting caught in the rain. Now, Joe owns a house. It's a pretty nice house. It's his private property. But there's something illegal in that house. Joe's a hoarder, and he has a lot of cats. Problem is, none of the cats are his. He's been stealing them for about 2 years. Yeah, Joe's a little crazy. Now, those cats are hidden in Joe's house, and because of that, police can't just enter his house without his consent. But if this police officer obtained a warrant, the officer can enter his home even if Crazy Joe doesn't want him to. Oh, when will you learn, Crazy Joe? Those things are illegal. In the criminal justice system, your rights in court are protected by 4 separate yet equally important amendments. Amendments that protect your entitlement to a fair trial, to remain silent, and prevent cruel and unusual punishment. These are those amendments. While you may have not had to deal with your legal rights, and hopefully won't anytime soon, they're still really important. Let's refer back to our good buddy, Crazy Joe. Turns out, he got arrested. Which brings us to the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment deals with those who are accused of a crime. You have the right to due process, and you have the right to remain silent and not act as a witness against yourself in a crime. Now, if Crazy Joe ends up going to trial, he's going to need to rely on the Sixth Amendment, which covers your rights in criminal cases. A criminal case is brought by the local, state, or federal government in response to a suspected violation of a law and seek a fine or a jail sentence, or both. The Sixth Amendment covers a lot of your legal rights. You have the right to a speedy trial. You have a right to an unbiased jury of your peers. You have the right to know what charges are being brought against you. And, finally, you have the right to a lawyer to represent you in court. And if you can't afford one, the state will provide you one. This is to ensure that you have a fair representation in your trial and that someone really knowledgeable about the law can help you plead your case. Now let's say that Crazy Joe has been found innocent of the crime of stealing all his neighbor's cats. But he may have to go to court for another reason. Joe's neighbors can't sleep at night because of all the cat noises coming from his house. His neighbors want to take him to court to deal with these noise complaints. This would be a civil case. Civil cases are generally brought by private individuals or corporations seeking to collect money or monetary compensation. The Seventh Amendment deals with this type of case. In these type of cases, you were allowed to have a trial with a jury or just a judge. Now, let's pretend instead of Joe being found innocent, he was found guilty. I know, I'm sorry, Joe. Once you're found innocent of a crime, you can't be found guilty. Regardless, if he is found guilty and he has to go to jail, he can rest assured knowing that the 8th Amendment, which deals with the treatment of criminals, protect him. The 8th Amendment prohibits excessively high fines and forbids cruel and unusual punishment. The last two amendments deal with all the stuff the Founding Fathers knew they missed mentioning, but still wanted to protect. The 9th Amendment deals with all of your natural rights not explicitly listed. Reading the 9th Amendment seems complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. By doing this, the Founding Fathers don't have to write out all of your rights, including the ones that didn't even exist during that time. The Constitution protects your natural right to pursue happiness in any way you want. They wanted to leave it up to you to interpret that however you like. Last but not least, the 10th Amendment, which addresses the powers of the states and the people. Any power not given to the states by the Constitution, or specifically prohibited by the Constitution, are left up to the states. The Constitution gives certain powers to the United States as a country, prohibits individual states from having certain powers, and anything left over, the states get to decide what to do with. The Constitution has been around for a pretty long time. But throughout our history, there have been times when people disagree on how to interpret what the Founding Fathers meant. In cases like this, we rely on the judicial branch of our government to deliver rulings, and even then, sometimes justices disagree. Some believe that the Bill of Rights should be adaptive and should be interpreted based on the needs of that current society. And others, sometimes referred to as the four-corner interpreters, believe that we should only take into account what was written in black and white, and make our judgments based off of that. Now, whether you see the Bill of Rights as a living document, a permanent document, or something in between, we should all agree that it's more than just a document. This little piece of paper has the potential to keep you safe, happy, and free every day. So yeah, the Bill of Rights is pretty important and very epic.
Did that video help you understand?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions?
Time when it matters most.
Sorry.
Extended stay.
Okay, you're going to be able to go back and use that video again later if you want to, but that's why I wanted to know if you felt like that video was helpful in understanding what the Bill of Rights was.
Mm-hmm.
What the Bill of Rights is, I guess. It's the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. So, alright, we're going to look at the First Amendment. Amendment 1, which is the one that says, I'm having trouble putting this up on our smart board, so if you will look at our anchor chart with me, we have this Bill of Rights anchor chart up in class. Amendment 1 says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right to the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Okay, so there's like 5 things they're talking about just in that one amendment. So when you hear people talk about freedom of speech, that's part of the First Amendment. Part of your First Amendment rights. Also, freedom of religion. When you hear people say those things, that's where they're getting it. So, what I'm going to ask you guys to do as a class here is, can you list some problems for me that would arise if the country didn't have the First Amendment?
The First Amendment is the
freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press.
Well, quite a few people would be very angry, and people would get punished for things that would seem normal if we did have the First Amendment. And your religion you'd have to keep your religion quiet.
Okay, you might have to keep your religion quiet.
You would have to keep your religion quiet or not be able to attend your religion.
Okay, that's a good one.
In fear of the government.
Since we don't have a board, I'm going to write. Okay, so one is that a problem that might happen is what? Can you repeat that really quick for me?
You would either have to hide your religion or not be able to attend your religion in fear of the government.
Okay, so you might be afraid to maybe go to church.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so can we think of any other problems that what could happen?
You would be punished for saying things that are against the government.
You could be punished. Very good point. For saying things. In some countries, that happens. Okay. So since you're my only student, you can this would be a time where we'd be coming up with things, but...
The next one, people would, when they rioted, they would bring guns with them. It wouldn't be peaceful at all. It would be harmful.
In the First Amendment? We're just talking about the First Amendment right now.
Isn't it about peaceful?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. So you have a right to peaceably assemble.
Mm-hmm. But people, if they're not allowed to peaceably assemble, they would be mad about that and probably unpeaceably assemble.
Okay. So people having the right to peaceably assemble
would make them want to peaceably assemble more, but if they didn't have the right to peaceably assemble, and
means they feel like they can get their frustrations out.
Yeah, but if they're not allowed to peacefully assemble, they feel like if they peacefully assemble, then they need something to protect themselves.
Yeah. So yeah, in some countries, people rise up against their government. In our country, we have a right to go to a protest or get together and talk about anything we want without the government interfering. So that's... Alright, can you think of any other...
What are the other rights?
Well, this is still the First Amendment here where
What are
we...
the other rights?
Sorry, here's your anchor chart. I apologize. If it was my classroom, I'd have it up on the wall.
People would be making secret newspapers dissing the government.
Okay, so people might have to make secret newspapers.
If they wanted to talk about something about the government or wanted to inform some people about what's happening with the government, they would have to make secret newspapers or find a secret way to share them.
Okay, so they'd have to keep their... They might have to do it anonymously, too?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a really good point. Okay. So, can you think of one more thing that might come up if...
What is a redress of grievances?
Okay, so if I want to go complain to my governor, this is about the federal government, but if I want to complain about a bill that I don't like or a law or, hey, this bill that you passed affects me because I have to pay more for something, or... So you have a right to complain, basically.
People would be very angered and probably, instead of complaining about the government, rally or protest or hurt the government.
So they may be angry that they can't complain.
Yes, and they would either do bad things until their message got through,
Or just suffer in silence.
which I don't think a lot of people would do.
Depends on what if the government can punish you
Yeah.
for complaining, then
People
more
would
people...
try to uprise against the government.
They might, or they might suffer for a long time before they do. Okay, so those are some really good points. I feel like you're wrapping your head around some of the rights really well. So, what I want during this time, I want you and your partner to pick another amendment from the Bill of Rights and write out 2 problems that might come up if the country didn't have that amendment. Okay, so this is a time, if you want to sound stuff off of me, I can be your partner too. But this is mostly about you. So you pick another amendment and do the same kind of thing with that amendment. And then we can share them.
Fifth Amendment.
Okay, you and your partner are gonna pick the Fifth Amendment? Alright, go for it.
Should I just say them out loud or write them down?
I would. So we're gonna. Okay, so 2 problems that would come up if we didn't have the Fifth Amendment. And then in my main classroom, I would have more people picking other amendments and sharing about that, but. Now, if you'd like to use the video or our text set that we have about the Constitution and the Bill of Rights on Epic, to do that. If not, if you just want to pull it out of your head.
So this one's about the law, right?
Okay. This one's pretty complicated. Okay, so this is about double jeopardy too. Like she said, you can't be tried for the same crime twice. So say...
Unless you commit it again.
Well, that would be a separate crime then. So say the government tried me for murdering my husband, and then I got out, I was acquitted or found not guilty. They couldn't
Call you back.
They couldn't call me back and charge me with that same crime again.
Unless they
Alright.
found new evidence or like your fingerprints.
But, and then this one's also about, like, you can say, if you're testifying and somebody wants you to incriminate yourself, you can plead the Fifth Amendment and say, I don't have to testify and admit to things that might make me look bad in court. I can plead the Fifth Amendment. I don't have to testify against myself.
I'm done.
So, this is about, like, when you get arrested, you get due process, you get a trial. They can't take your private property, and you know, like, the cops can't come in and take your personal belongings just because you get arrested.
Done.
Okay. So, go ahead and share this with the class. So, we're going to go around now and share.
The first problem would
Hold on
be-
just a second, sweetheart. We're going to go around now and share what you and your partner came up with. So, when you are talking to the class, would you tell us which amendment that you chose and then the 2 issues that might come up if it didn't exist? Aurora?
I did not have a partner, but I chose the Fifth Amendment.
Just for time.
Me and my partner chose the Fifth Amendment, and we decided that the first problem would be that the jails would be overpopulated and there would be way too many people in jail because they didn't have access to a lawyer.
Ooh. So, part of the things is you do have due process. You can
Have a lawyer.
You can have a lawyer and defend yourself. So, that's a really good point, that having a lawyer helps people maybe not have to sit in jail for no reason. Okay.
Also, if there were lawyer offices, they would always be extremely busy and way too busy.
So you feel like people might get arrested more if there
Yes.
wasn't due process? Why is that?
Because all the lawyers are either busy or there aren't very many lawyers or they don't have enough money to buy a lawyer.
Okay. But do you think people are going to get arrested more?
No, but some more trials would be lost because they didn't even have lawyers to
Okay.
represent them.
So, you're talking about like a public defender, like somebody,
Yeah.
if they can't afford a lawyer.
And what if there were no lawyers available because everybody else had them?
So, you have a right to have representation at your trial.
Yes.
All right. Okay. So those are some good points about the Fifth Amendment. And if we were doing this in the big class, we would go around and share about some of the different amendments. We do not have any classmates right now to do that with, so. All right. Well, independently, I'm going to ask you, here is each amendment written out with a place for you to illustrate it. So what I'm going to ask you to do on your own is take each amendment, and I know there's a lot of stuff going on in some of the amendments, and draw a picture to, like, if this was you writing a book about the Bill of Rights, can you please illustrate each amendment that we talked about today? Now, you can use our text set. Each amendment is written out there for you, but you can use your text set as needed, or the video, or any of our resources.
This is a church. I'm going to draw a church.
Okay.
This is the big bell tower. This is like one of the side towers.
Okay.
Aren't there like windows in the side towers?
So you're illustrating the freedom of religion part of the First Amendment. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And there's a big bell tower.
Just do your own thing. It doesn't have to be perfect.
And then there's the bell. And the little
The clangy thing.
tiny thing.
I love it.
Door. And here's the
Oh my
bell.
gosh. The camera's been really funky the whole time. Got a weird hair thing going on.
This is the police.
It's what?
The police.
What are they doing there?
This is a church, but they don't like the church, so they're gonna come and they're gonna shut down the church.
Okay, this doesn't have to be about problems.
I know.
This is about... So they don't have a right to do that, right? So this is about this is about the rights themselves. So when you're illustrating it, class, Aurora pointed something out to me. If my directions weren't clear, you just have to illustrate what you think maybe something about the amendment means. Doesn't mean you have to illustrate anything that might have to do with problems that would arise if we didn't have it.
Can
So.
we though? Can we illustrate the problem?
I'd like you to give me a representation of the amendment itself, not the problems. If you'd like to go through and do that, like if you finish this part and then you'd like to go through and do that, I would give you extra paper for you to do that.
Oh no, this is the guy who's reading the scroll of the Bible,
Okay.
and this is a guy offering bread and wine.
Okay. Yep. If you have any questions, feel free to use the books from our EPIC class list or the video or the anchor chart with the Bill of Rights on it. Okay. And if you're doing 10 of these, just remember you may not have time to make elaborate illustrations for each one.
This is a robber.
I'll give you the chance when you're done to show the class and explain your illustrations if you'd like, okay? Now, why don't you go through and do the illustrations, and then at the end you can explain them all to me. I guess if you'd like to explain them as you go along, that's fine, since we don't have any classmates.
Alright, this is a church, and this is one guy reading the Bible, on a scroll. This is a guy offering bread and wine. These are two Christians.
Those are all people who have the right to freely.
This is a robber, and that's a guy with a gun to protect himself.
Okay.
I detailed his mouth very well.
Okay. He's not happy.
No, he's not happy. No, what is it?
I like the bubble.
Thank you. This is a soldier trying to go into someone's house, and he's like, go away.
Okay, so that's the Third Amendment. People don't have to let soldiers live in their house. Government can't force them to do that. Cool.
That's the same point. That's the same soldier, but this time he came back with a warrant. And he's like, oh man.
So they have a warrant to do what?
Come into his house and search his house. Because he was
Okay.
there in the first place. Like, I think you have something in your house.
So that's a police officer with a warrant, or I guess a government soldier couldn't do that
Yes.
either.
It's a government soldier.
Okay. Well, that works too. The government representatives can't come into your house.
Favorite one.
So they got a warrant from a judge to search.
Yes.
Okay. They need that if they're going to search your house. Nice.
This is the judge.
You're doing the Fifth Amendment?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do you want me to pause this?
Yes. This is him being found innocent for a crime.
Okay.
And this is the police, or the government soldier coming back like, round 2.
Like, we're going to try you again?
Yes. And he's like,
No?
no.
You can't do that. Cool. I get it.
This is the judge, and this is the opposite team's lawyer saying, Your Honor, I would like to ask the accused to be my witness. And our little house dude is saying, I plead the 6th Amendment.
I think that's the Fifth Amendment.
No, because...
This says you can't be convicted before going on a public trial.
Okay, so this is the 4th one. 5, 6. Plus 5 looks like that. 5 is just a V. If a V with a I.
But this one doesn't say you don't have to testify against yourself. It's okay. So the Fifth Amendment has more than one thing going on. You already illustrated that.
Alright, so the Sixth Amendment.
I'll let you go back and do that again later, but would you like to just, since we don't have more than one, you can skip to the Seventh Amendment. The Sixth Amendment. It's easy to get these confused. You're just learning about them, right?
This guy says, I call for a trial with just a judge. And he says, I wish to have a jury trial.
Cool. That makes sense. Which one are you on? Amendment 9 or 8?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the guy saying, sign here for a fine of $1 million. And this is our little dude saying, all I did was steal a lawnmower.
So $1 million would be a pretty excessive fine.
Yes, but okay.
Yeah, you've got the last two there. They've got their own page.
You have other rates outside this town.
So yeah, if you're confused by any of these, like you can have rights granted to you by local authorities or state.
This is a ghost person saying these are your only rights.
In the Constitution?
Yes. And he says, no.
Yeah. You might have like I might have rights in my town or my state. Cool. And 10 says, any power not given to the federal government belongs to the states. They do a good job of putting that in more kid-friendly language, don't they?
Yeah. This is the government saying, I don't want this to one law, and this is all the states saying, I want it.
Okay, yeah, so if it's not covered by the federal government, then the states have a right to make their own laws as long as it doesn't violate the laws of the federal government. Like Iowa can have laws that are different from Ohio or Indiana.
And
what? Sorry. I didn't mean to yawn. That's such bad manners. Okay. So you can go ahead now that you've shared.
I was gonna say I can do the Sixth Amendment now.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish up any amendments that you haven't done before we turn them in. There is space on the last page if you need it.
This is a little friend saying, what did I do? This is a police officer or someone who's taken him to court. No. And there's an X over it because you can't do that.
So you can't do what?
You can't not tell them what they're...
If you get arrested, you have to tell somebody what they're charged with and give them all the information.
You can't just go, you're arrested. No. For what? And you can be like, no. Which is why I X'd this off.
Nice. I get that. All right. Well, we'll be turning in our Bill of Rights illustrations, and Aurora shared hers, so I might have other students share them, but we don't have any other students. So, why are you glad, students? Why are you glad that we have the Bill of Rights? After talking about all this.
I'm glad that we have the Bill of Rights so that there's not, like, overcrowded. If there's no overcrowded prison, they'll have to either let some of them go, which would be dangerous if like, say there are a bunch of people that are convicted of attempted murder, and there's way too many of them.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other people who actually did murder, and so they get let out of jail. Then there's somebody that tried to murder someone out on the loose.
So you think if some of these rights weren't there, there might be way more people in jail than needed to be?
And more dangerous people out.
Okay. There wouldn't be room for
and
the most problematic crimes.
Innocent people would be
Possibly.
guilty.
Innocent people might end up in jail.
Well, they already do, but more often.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.